Hello everybody, this is Shannon Brody and we are going to go ahead and get started. So this is the beginning of the 7 series technical training session. So what we're talking today about is specifically the 4 key functions. But first I'm going to start with kind of discussing the way the home screen is organized and some of things about the toolbar row above here. So this is the TouchStone home screen, and when you log in, you're going to see this home screen. You'll know who you're logged in as because it'll show you right here in the user. If you've set up a control panel, you'll see it here, and this will show you which control panels have been assigned to you as this user. If you're a manager and you've been assigned a control panel, you're going to also see this area called Management Review, and this will show all of your subordinate positions, or the people who report to you that have been given a username and password to TouchStone, and you'll see their names specifically display here like you're seeing these. This is the Message Center, which allows you to send messages inside of TouchStone, and this folder is called the Public folder. And we're going to be talking as we get into the sessions more extensively about the Message Center and the Public folder, but just so you can know what you're looking at when you log into the home screen, you're going to see these public processes listed here. And these are processes that have been made public by someone, an administrator, and which means that you'll have access to these processes. They may or may not be on a job description you have access to, but through here, through the public folder, you'll always be able to see those processes. In the upper right-hand corner of the screen here, the first thing I want to show you here is the Resource Center. When you click the Resource Center link, it's going to take you, open it in a second window and take you to the TouchStone Resource Center. The Resource Center is a kind of do-it-yourself guide inside of TouchStone. You have a user guide right here, which is a step-by-step for everything in TouchStone. When you select this, you'll see like the categories broken out, and then you can look specifically at those different tools inside of TouchStone and go exactly to what you want to do. And there's pictures and how-tos inside of every one of the links in the user guide. The next button over is our webinars area. So this is the technical training series. This is, I think, the last one that was done. These get replaced unless I blow it for some reason, but these get replaced every time the new technical training series has come through. Right next to that is the videos area. So this has got, process of the week videos, which is something we do here in the technical training. We'll do highlight a process of the week. These are all by category. So you can go and listen to like a 15-minute snippet of each of these processes that were the process of the week. There's other videos in here like strategy videos. The Knowledge Library has access to our blog. It's got articles, past newsletters in it. And then lastly, contact support, which you can get to here, or you can also go up here to get to it. So under the support tab, this is how you can contact us. If you don't have somebody's email address, you can contact us right through here. If you have a problem or you have a feature request or there's a bug you're experiencing or you have any issue with some kind of functionality in TouchStone, you can click here, report a problem, fill this out, and hit submit, and then we'll get that and address it. Also here under the support tab, here's a registration to our TouchStone University, which is also free courses that we offer. They're usually half an hour, and they're kind of just tips and techniques for TouchStone. Then we've got a registration to the live technical training. If we have any known issues or bugs that we're dealing with, they'll appear here. And then there's a glossary of terms. So definitions of things inside of TouchStone and how we define those things. So come to the Resource Center here if you've just got a basic question that you forgot how to do, or you have a question about some functionality. There's also kind of explanations of things in the user guides too, so like the difference between strategic and tactical and all kinds of things. So come here if you have a question or you just kind of need some inspiration, like to get going with TouchStone, to start to think strategically, to get some ideas for processes that you might want to document. To the right of the Resource Center link is account administration. So this is where you can set up users for your system. There's a whole quick link video for how to use account administration in the Resource Center. There's also these little help menus throughout the Resource Center which define things for you. The search button is next to account administration. This allows you to search for anything in TouchStone. So you can put in a full or a partial word and you hit search. Then it's going to fill in or it's going to give you a link to whatever it is you're searching for. The search is a great way to find things that you may have forgotten where you put in TouchStone, or to check if you've got a duplicate title for something, or you're about to enter something and it gives you the duplicate error. You can go to search and find that. User settings is the next icon over here, and this just gives you access to your username and password. So here you can reset it. All the passwords are encrypted, so you won't be able to see what they are, and we can't see what they are either. But you can reset it here. The account administration area, if you're an administrative user, you can reset passwords here as well. So I can choose a user from the user list and reset the password down here. But if you're not an administrator, you can go to this user settings to reset your passwords. The logout button is important to use. So if you're logged into TouchStone and then you're finished with it for the day, go ahead and log out. It's just kind of good internet protocol. TouchStone will time out in, I think, 5 hours of inactivity. So if you do leave for the day and then you forgot to log out of TouchStone, the minute you click anything in it, it's going to log you out once it's been inactive for 5 hours. But it will stay active up into those 5 hours. So if you get up and leave your computer and you've got something sensitive you're working on, just make sure to log out. Okay, so let's go to this toolbar row above here. The 4 key functions, which is what we're going to talk about today, is a place where your lists of processes are kept. So all the processes are kept here in the 4 key functions. The org chart is a picture of your positions, your people. So this is where you document or you create a structure for your company by department, and you create position titles. These 2 tools come together when you link processes from the 4 functions list to these boxes on the chart, which create what we call a job description. So this is the job description. So all the processes are listed over here in subject order, and then you've got all your positions here. And then the 2 come together with this org chart, because basically you're linking processes from the 4 functions list to every box on the chart that's accountable for them, and that creates what we call a job description. The reports tab is the last one here. This allows you to run reports from your control panel, or if you're a manager, from your employees' control panels. So here on the home screen again, I have a control panel here, and if I'm completing work or processes in this control panel, it's all being stored back to TouchStone. And I can go here to reports and run a report of those processes. This management review report, same idea. It lets you run a report of your employees' work. So here you can see I've got all these people that report to me through management review. I can go into each of their names and look at their processes if I want, or I can run a report and say, give me a list of all the checklists that Sally did today, and I would get a list of those things. So that's what the report tool is for. So let's go to the 4 key functions. So here are the 4 key functions. You create a list of your processes. If you have had TouchStone for a while and you haven't gone through the exercise of just creating a master list of processes, then this is a good thing to do. Sometimes people get excited and go into just one function and list out the processes and build a job description and start using it, and they don't really finish out all the other functions. So I'm going to go through how to build the 4 functions right now, and for those of you who haven't done this exercise yet, then maybe this is a chance to come back and do it kind of the right way. Guiding the business is the first function here at the top, and it is for strategy, strategic, and managerial processes. So things that are used to guide the company, higher level things, strategy work, managerial work. Getting the business is marketing, strategy, advertising, sales, everything you do to get business in the door. Doing is for all of your operational processes, so the delivering of your products or services. So once you get new business, how do you give them what they purchased or deliver what they bought? Running is administration and finance, things that are used to run the overall company. So admin, finance, IT, it's kind of like the support processes for the whole company. So as a whole, these 4 functions represent any business and all the work that happens in that business. When you select one of the 4 key functions, it takes you to a list of your processes. These lists are organized by what we call sub-functions, which are these little black titles here. So the sub-functions are the categories of work within this function, and then we see the processes. So it's getting the business is the overall function. Then we have these sub-functions within getting the business, and then we have the processes related to that sub-function. So it's a hierarchy. You've got the 4 key, you drill down to sub-areas, and then ultimately you see the process. Right here, this little edit pencil, this allows you to change the function title, one of the 4 key functions. So if you don't like getting the business, then you could change this to marketing and sales. You just delete this and then retype in the new name. What I would recommend is that you kind of keep the general themes of the 4 functions. So remember, you got to sell things, you got to deliver, you've got to support the overall company, you've got to have some strategy and management. If we called this advertising and this sales, well, we're going to run out of functions. So change these function titles if you prefer something different, but keep the general themes the same. Right above here is how you control the subfunctions. So I can add a subfunction right here. Just put in the name of the subfunction, hit save, and then that subfunction is added. These subfunctions toggle left to right. So this one's down here at the bottom. I can delete a subfunction just by hitting delete right here, and then I'm going to get a list of all my subfunctions, drop down. These are grayed out because I can't delete a subfunction that's got processes in it. Otherwise, where would the processes go? So you'll see the subfunction that's available to delete. You hit delete, and then that subfunction will be gone. Everything is drag and drop in TouchStone, more or less. So if you do want to delete a subfunction, just drag your processes from one list to the other, one subfunction to the other, until this one is empty, and then you can delete it. I can also edit the titles of subfunctions. So I hit the drop-down, choose the subfunction title I want to edit, type in the new title, and hit save, and then TouchStone edits the subfunction title. You can also reorder your subfunctions. So I just hit reorder, and then I move these up and move these down, and then hit save, and then I'd adjust the order. So the subfunctions are for organizing your processes. They're to give you some kind of categories so you can start to kind of zero in on what are the processes I need. If you just think of getting the business, well, sometimes it's like so overwhelming with everything that happens there. It's harder to get the details down of all the processes you need. It's easier when you think, what are the sub-areas within this or sub-functions, and then you start thinking, well, what are the processes to get this result, like advertising? And then it kind of helps you break it up into key areas. Inside of getting the business, normally what I would see is a marketing strategy subfunction. Everybody's got to do some amount of strategy, whether you do it or not. You have to think about what you're going to market and sell. So a few processes here at least. I usually see a sales subfunction that's used to say sales. So the closing of these leads you're bringing in. There should normally be an advertising subfunction, or you can call it lead generation, and within that, all of your processes for generating leads, advertising. Sales management, there could be another subfunction for that. These are the kind of higher level things that happen in sales, the management, the quantification. If you do estimating, sometimes you'll have an estimating subfunction. I've also seen the estimating inside of doing the business, inside of operations. So usually those are the typical sub-functions within getting the business. Inside of guiding, what would be typical for sub-functions would be board of directors. Whether you have a board or not, you still need to think strategically at that level and have some kind of meetings of the owners, meetings of the entrepreneurs to decide, what's going to happen in the business. Employee management, this is a must sub-function. All the processes you use to manage your people, even if you just have subcontractors, how do you manage those subcontractors? A training sub-function, sometimes these two are combined depending on how many processes you have, but you can have a training sub-function and then a strategy sub-function for business strategy. Inside of running the business, so now we're in running, and I know we're there because I can see it right here. And you also may have noticed that I can toggle back and forth between the 4 key functions right here. So inside of running the business, human resources, typical sub-function here, finance, financial management for the higher level things related to finance, IT, that's your information technology, your computer processes, and then admin, so all of your administrative processes. Inside of doing the business, this is where it gets defined by what you do, right, by your industry. So if you're a service company, you may have a client service or a service delivery. If you're a production company, you may have material control, inventory control sub-function, production management or operations management for the higher level things. If you produce something or you build something, maybe a sub-function for that service or that product being produced. So think about your industry, think about what are the key areas within it, and then define those sub-functions. There's nothing you're really going to do wrong with the sub-functions. They're purely there to help you organize your processes. If you want assistance with defining your sub-functions, we've seen probably every industry there could be, and we may have examples of typical sub-functions within our industry. So you can always go to the help desk here if you don't have somebody's a contact from Business Design Corp directly. You can go to support and say, send me an example of a sub-functions for this industry. Next to this edit pencil, edit function title, this is our export feature. So the export arrow pointing to the right, you're going to see that all throughout TouchStone. Everything in TouchStone will print directly to your printer. It'll export to Word, to a PDF, or you can email it. So these are the ways of getting documents out of TouchStone. The print to PDF is the best, really, if you want like kind of a polished look and feel to whatever it is you're printing. Word allows you to kind of adjust things, so you can create page breaks and move things around. So we have extensive functionality throughout TouchStone that allows you to print and export. Having said that, think about what you're exporting and if there's actually a need to export it. So one of the benefits of TouchStone is that it's on the web, it's in the cloud, right? So it's everything inside of it is what's inside of it, and that is the most accurate, up-to-date version of your materials and information that exists. The minute you export it and save it or send it to somebody, then you've created another version, plus you're using paper. So one of the results you can get by using TouchStone is to try to be paperless and be more in control of your versions of your documents. So one habit to get into, rather than printing or even emailing for that matter, if I wanted somebody to look at this client satisfaction work plan that I've been working on, I can go up to the URL right here and go right-click copy, and then I can go to my email and paste it into the email and say, hey, go look at this, to my manager or whoever I want to have look at it. So I'm giving them a direct link right to what I'm talking about, and rather than printing it, they're looking at the current version. Okay. Right here, add new process. This is how you add a process to TouchStone. So you click add new process. You're going to put in the name of your process. Tell TouchStone which subfunction to put it in, and then you hit save. So super easy. Add the process, tell TouchStone which subfunction it goes in, hit save. If you put it in the wrong subfunction, just drag it to wherever you want it to be. You'll notice that this process I just added, I'm going to drag it right here, is red. And it's red because there's nothing in it. It's just a title. So if I select this and you look over here, there's nothing in this process. It's red. The minute I put something in it, it's going to turn it blue like this one. So what I mean by that is if I go to this process and I go here and I put in a new work plan, I hit create. This is the redundancy control. So this is telling me I already have a work plan with this title. So I'm going to alter it a bit. Then I hit save, and now I've got a work plan in here. So if I go back, you'll see it's blue now. So red means there's nothing in it. It's just a title. Blue means it's got something in it. We call it in process, like you're working on it. When you're finished with it, you can fill in this box that says process documentation completed. And now I go back, and the title's black. So this is iterated right here in this little menu, but it just basically is a way of telling what the status of your processes are. Someone's asking a question about, can you unmark it as complete? So yes, you can. So I unflip this flag. Now it's not going to be black anymore. If I go back to the 4 functions here, it's blue again. So you may have completed a process, but then maybe you decide to change it, or you decide it needs more work. You can go back and unmark it as complete, and then the process title will turn blue again. And then when I'm finished with it, I can mark it as complete again. So it's completely manual, the way you turn it black and the way you can unturn it black. You can also put processes in the public folder, and that is color-coded as well. So that's what these 2 little icons are about. So remember, the public folder is where you put public processes, and these are processes that would be company-wide information, so things that all employees would need to use. And from here, they can access these processes. So this is more of an advanced thing, but if you want to put a process in the public folder, you can choose it and then fill in this little box, make process public and available to all users. Now if I go back here, you'll see it's got a little green check mark next to it. So having said this about the public folder, sometimes I look at people's accounts and they've got like 50 processes in the public folder. And it's really an indication that you're not really understanding how you assign a process to a position right here. So if it's a process that's the accountability of 1 or 2 or even 5 people on your org chart, you link it to their job description. That's how you assign the process. And when they want to find that process or use it, they go to their job description and then here it is. If it's a company-wide process, so every box on the org chart, every single person would need to have access to this, then rather than linking it to every single job description, go to and make it a public process, and that puts it here. So it's right on my home screen, I can find it. So things that are common in the public folder would be like employee handbook, communications, like how to answer the phone, time management, new employee information, company-wide training information. So put those types of things in the public folder. Okay, let's go back. Right next to this Add New Process, you have Add from Process Library. So this gives you access to our library. So when you access the library, you're going to see a list of processes that are available for you to download into your system. So the library is meant to give you some ideas on typical types of processes that you can have. It's also, most of these processes have some documentation in them. So they've got examples of how this work is done, which is also meant to kind of give you a head start with documenting of your processes. So to pull something from the library, starting over again, You go right here, Add from Process Library. Every function has its own library. So what I mean is every one of these 4 functions has its own library related to this function. So here I'm going to see things related to marketing, advertising, sales. Here I'm going to see things related to HR, administration, finance, human resources, said that, IT. So if I go back here to running the business and I go Add from Process Library, I'm going to see a list in alphabetical order. If you hover over the title here, it gives you the objective of the process, so it kind of tells you what's in it. If I want a process, I fill in the blank here, or the check mark. I go up and choose the subfunction I want to put it in, and then I hit Save, and it will download it into my system. These processes that are grayed out are already in my system. So you can't, it won't let you pull a duplicate process or pull it twice. Because and then these are all grayed out, which is an indication of that. So I hit Save here, and then TouchStone's going to pull that process from the library right down here into my account. If the process comes across in blue, well, then they'll let you know it has something in it. So if I select this, then I'll see all this documentation that I've got, to the ability to use. When you're pulling library processes, make sure you look at them, look at the documentation, and really ask yourself, is this something that I'm going to use? Is it something that I'm going to document, implement, and use within the next 6 months, say? If the answer is yes, then keep it in your account, and when you're ready, go and edit it and make it your own and use it. If you look at it and you decide, well, this isn't really something that isn't what I thought it was, or it's not something I'm going to use right away, I would recommend you delete it. So to delete a process, you drag it up to this delete folder, wait for it to turn green, see how it's turning green, and then let go, and then hit delete. If you delete a library process, it puts it back into the library. So you'll see now it's right here again. So don't be afraid to delete library processes. If you like it, but it's not something you're going to use, say, in 6 months, then delete it for now, and always know that you can go back to the library and find it again. We release new processes to the library probably quarterly, and you usually get an announcement of those processes that have been released, and there's usually a video about them in the Resource Center. But just know that you always can go back to this library and get those processes again. The last thing you want to do is download everything from the library and then just have 100 processes in your account that you didn't add yourself, and you're not really sure if you're going to implement and use them. Then it just makes things more complicated and it clutters up your system. So just like I deleted a library process, that's how you would delete any process from the 4 functions. So I take it, drag it up, wait for it to turn green, and then let go. Make sure it's actually something you want to delete before you delete it. So if it's blue, always look at it and make sure there's nothing inside of it here that you actually want. If you do want to keep any of the process tools that are inside of it, you can do one of 2 things. You can print them just by clicking this and then going to the export arrow. You can move them out of one process into another if you want using this icon. And these are all things we're going to go over when we get to the process tools training. So either print them, move them somewhere else until the process is empty, and then delete it. I think it's a good idea to keep in mind that you try not to delete any process that isn't red, because if it's blue, it's got something in it. Unless you're absolutely sure you don't want that anymore and you've already downloaded it, then go ahead and delete it. As far as deleting goes, administrators are the only ones who can delete processes. So anybody who's been made an administrator has a little key, either the key account holder here or it has a green key. Those are the people who can delete. So your regular users can't go in and delete anything. So keep that in mind about deleting. You can also take processes and move them from one function to another just by taking the process and dragging it over the function you want to move it into, let go, and then choose the subfunction. So I'm looking at my subfunctions that are in getting the business right now. I choose the process, and then I hit move. And so now it's moved it out of this function into getting the business right here. So drag and drop inside of one function from one subfunction to another, or you can take a process completely out of one function and move it into another. Okay, so let's talk about some strategy behind adding process titles. You'll notice from the library processes that, these are all library processes, that we have short, specific titles for things. It's usually like you would consider a title. Starts with a capital word, each word does, and it's short and specific. Welcome package, daily to-do list, appointment process, strategic alliances. So it's naming it. So that's important with the putting in your process titles. You want to name it. If you have like a sentence or a phrase, or even I've seen paragraphs before where people are like writing out sentences about the process, right, and making that the title. Steer away from that and try to think of something short and specific. If you want to say more about it, which you should, you can put it here in the objective, which is right here. So ensure that all referrals are generated, or how to generate referrals, how to develop and generate referrals. So define it all right here in what we call the objective, and keep your title short and specific. If you've defined your process titles with a sentence or a phrase, most of the time you can literally go to the process, cut the sentence or the phrase out of the title, and paste it into the objective, and then think of a better title. So keep your titles short and specific. Also, and this is kind of a nitpicky point, but try to build some protocol for it. So if you're going to capitalize every word, then capitalize every word, with, the first letter being capitalized. If you're going to do all caps, then do all caps. If you're obsessed with that, then do all caps. The problem with doing things that are not generally accepted is that if someone else goes to add processes that isn't you, they're a manager or anyone else in your company, they may not choose all caps. So if you want all caps, then put a rule, a policy inside of TouchStone that everything is in all caps, and make sure everyone does it that way. It's usually better to start with what's generally accepted out there when you're listing or writing or naming things, and that would be capital letter. If you're going to do like ampersand instead of an and, then decide things like that. That just makes your process titles consistent, which is, it's a good thing. It makes it so that everything kind of looks and feels the same. In a lot of ways, TouchStone forces people into a standardized protocol for the documentation, but some things are kind of preference. So decide what your preference is and then use that. When you're defining your process titles, also consider putting the subject first and the verb or the adjective second. So like in this one, I've got referral development. I'm not saying developing referrals, referral development. So you put the subject first and the verb or the adjective second. And the reason for that is when I'm looking for things in TouchStone, if I'm going to search for them up here or I'm looking at them anywhere, I'm going to think of the subject first. I'm not going to think of developing first. I'm going to think of referrals. Where's the referral process? So think about things like that when you're naming your processes. If you want to edit a process title, it's super easy. Whether it's a library process or not, you just click the process and you go right here to it and click. So I'll click to edit and save. So adding your process titles, short, specific titles, subject first. Another thing to think about, which is probably the most subjective and sometimes the most difficult part of naming your processes, is deciding what is a process and what is a work plan, a task in a process. So what is really the process title? So in TouchStone, you'll remember this hierarchy. We've got these big subject areas here. Then we drill down to sub-function titles, and then we get to process titles, and then we get to work plan titles. So it's like a big outline. 4 key functions here. Getting the business is the sub-function. Advertising is the process. Referral development, advertising is the sub-function. Referral development is the process. And then now we're in work plans. I have a work plan for generating referrals from clients, and I have a work plan for generating referrals from alliances. 2 different work plans. So this outline at the process level, which is right here, you then think to yourself, what are the workflows within this? So this is what I'm talking about, it being a bit subjective. So here's some tips about it. You want to think of the main categories of work, not the work, but the main categories of work within that function. So that's the sub-function. If I were to put in a process title called advertising, it would be way too big, because inside the way most businesses advertise in many different ways. They have social media, they do referrals, there's a lot of different ways that you advertise. And all of those ways have multiple workflows and tasks and information on how that's done. So making the process title too big is not a good idea. Sub-functions are going to house a list of processes, just like you're seeing here. So that's why it's important to kind of think about what are the key categories or sub-functions within each function. Inside of the processes themselves, you want to think of naming that work. So naming that process that happens. So referral development, sending out the welcome package, creating appointments. So think about the short specific titles. Then go to that process, and inside of it, think about, are there different workflows within this? So a work plan is a workflow. It's a series of tasks on how to get that work done. Sometimes processes will have multiple work plans in them or multiple workflows, like this one does. So I'll give you a few more examples. Let's go here. So here's a process called accounts payable. Within that process, I've got multiple work plans on all the different ways that we pay bills. So there's how to make check payments, how to do invoices, how to do special invoices, how to do bank deposits. So think about the process, paying bills or accounts payable, and then all the different workflows within it. Now here's where it gets subjective. There's nothing necessarily wrong with you making processes for all of these if you want. And you would have all those processes listed under the finance sub-function. The only issue with it is that your 4 functions list can get really big that way. You could have hundreds of processes, which sometimes leads to, things just being a bit overwhelming, all the processes. It's better to combine like results into a process like we're doing here. So think about the workflows or the procedures that occur for accounts payable, the different actions, and then build those in as separate workflows or work plans. If I had all of those work plans that were inside of here listed here, you can see where now it's 5 processes longer. The only time when you want that combining like results isn't necessarily a good idea is when different people do that, perform those tasks. So here, let's say we had a bookkeeper and then a bookkeeping assistant and then a collections person. And the bookkeeping assistant did this, and then the bookkeeper or the payables person did this. So you remember we're linking this whole process to a job description here. So if that's the case, that multiple people do these different work plans, I could put who does what in the title right here of the work plan itself. So I could go here and in the title put in accounts payable assistant. Or you could break this apart into specific processes and then link those to the job description. So that's just something to consider when you're thinking of processes versus work plans within a process. Here's another example of that. So here's recruiting, which is a process, and these are all of the activities related to recruiting are inside of here. How managers screen and hire employees or recruit leads to interview. Then we've got interviewing, which is separate. So this are all the activities for recruiting people, getting the interviews, and then these are all the activities for actually interviewing, the questions, the evaluation, the deciding who they're going to hire. This is a process for the administrative part of hiring. So here is checking resumes, doing phone references, doing all the testing. So this is the administrative component of that. So this is a separate process. So if we're thinking about linking to job descriptions, these two might get linked to every manager's job description who recruits and hires, and then this may just be on the HR person's or on the administrative manager. So you could combine all of these into one process and just call it recruiting and hiring. You could take this administrative part and put it into interviewing or recruiting. So this is what I mean by there's a certain amount of preference that comes to this as well. The key thing to remember is you're going to link these to job descriptions. So consider which job descriptions they're going to go to. Any questions about any of that? Someone's asking kind of an involved question about processes, about what work plans versus process titles. Sometimes there's not a perfect answer. So the best way to kind of get examples is to look at our library processes, because it breaks it down into what we consider to be basic process titles pretty accurately. And we've seen all of these different types of processes you're seeing here in the library documented, and then the ability to link them to different positions in a decent way exists when you keep the titles kind of similar to this. The only place it gets a little bit tricky is under doing the business, because we have some industry specific stuff, but mostly it's based on the industry that you're in. So if you have a question, like you just can't decide whether you put the material ordering multiple work plans within that or they're separate processes, you can always go to contact support and say, have someone call me about this and put in your question, and then we'll sit with you for 5 minutes and just do a go-to meeting and look at your account and kind of give you some suggestions. So if you're really struggling with it that way, then lean on us for some support and we'll help you. I'm going to get to the system of the week here in about 1 minute, but before I go there, I want to just talk again in general about how to get your 4 functions list done. So if you're starting brand new, if you're a new user and you haven't finished documenting your processes in the 4 functions, a good way to do this is to assign a team to it. So if you're a larger company and you have managers within each of these departments, because this is like the marketing and sales department, this is the operations department, admin, finance, these are the managers of all those departments. This dovetails with your org chart if you think about it. Getting the businesses here, doing the businesses here, running, and this is all guiding right up here. So get a team together, some representative from each of these 4 departments, and have them start working on a list of processes. Go to the library, pull what you like down from the list, and start coming up with a list of what you do. When you're in getting the business, you can kind of think or have a conversation about workflow. So how do we get the leads? That's these advertising processes. How do we get the leads? So you think of actual ways that you get them, through social media, through referrals, through direct mail, and then also think about things that you want to be doing, ways that you want to be generating leads, but you don't have a process for it yet, and put those things in as well. And then you can think to yourself, okay, we've generated a lead, what's the next thing that happens? Well, somebody contacts that lead. Well, then you need a appointment setting process or a lead contact process or a script. Then they contact the lead, and then there's an evaluation that's done of some kind. So you do needs assessment, or so you think about it in a workflow. And that helps you identify processes. What's the first thing that happens, the second, the third, all the way until it's closed. Then you can go to doing the business and say, okay, a new sale has been made. What's the first thing that happens here in doing the business? So you can kind of workflow your way through it, and it makes sense for a lot of times the getting the business processes. So get people involved, have them start brainstorming lists of processes that you would add to TouchStone. Another thing you can do is do activity trackers, we call them. So in the library, there's a process called, I think it's called 4 Key Functions Development, or Process List Development, that's what it's called. So it's right here, Process List Development. And within that process, there's a spreadsheet that you can use to send out to people and have them make a list of what they're doing. So what this gives you is just a way to see the tasks or the work that's being performed by each position so that you can then make process list titles out of it. So this is an example of the activity tracker in this process. And it's a spreadsheet, but you could do this over email as well. So this is the office manager, and she's just listing, I did 401k, I did medical, I did dental. And then over here, you can identify what is the process name for that. So this medical and dental admin is related to employee benefits, and these may be multiple work plans within that. So people's actual activities, the work that they do, can lead you to the process title. Okay, so let's talk about the process of the week while we still have time. One of the #1 reasons that businesses don't systematize or don't build processes and don't finish that work is because, not going to be a surprise to everyone, you're too busy, right? Everyone's too busy. We all have full-time jobs already. You all work 40, 50 hours a week, and now you have to document your processes. When people leave TouchStone, it's not because they don't like TouchStone. It's because they just don't have time to use it. That's everyone's reason. I didn't have time. I didn't have time. So I decided to do this task delegation and work management process just to kind of address this issue and talk about it ahead of time so that you can start to do things to carve out a little bit more time. If you spend a half an hour a day, an hour a day working on TouchStone, working on processes, if 10 people did that in your company, 15 minutes a day even, over the long haul, you're going to get a lot done. But it's this overwhelm kind of, I got too much to do mindset. The phone's ringing, the sales have to be made, technical thinking, you might say, that stops people from building their businesses or stops managers from building successful departments. We have a lot of managers on the line here. Some people I recognize and some I don't. But not all of you are the owners of the business. A lot of you are the managers of the company. Documented processes are a manager's best friend. They are a way for you to really be an inspirational leader, not just to, if you're the owner of the company, but within your department, to become efficient and effective and to grow your department. But you have to have the time to do it. So this process is called task delegation and work management. This is in the library, and you can pull this down and look at it. Go to this form that's here. So the inability to delegate is one of the biggest problems that I see with managers. And I've been doing this work a long time. I was a consultant, strategic consultant way before this. This is the #1 problem. It's the manager's inability to be able to give off that work effectively. And we all get into our own little habits about this where we want to control it all, or we've been burned so many times that we've delegated work and then they haven't been able to do it. And so then you get in trouble for that because the buck stops here. So there's all these different reasons. The confidence to be able to delegate comes from having a documented process. So do more by doing less. Pass the baton. Give that work to train another employee how to use it. So surround yourself with the best people you can find, have a good recruiting and hiring process then delegate that authority. And you can use this delegation process that we've defined in the library to help you with that. Don't interfere as long as the process, the documented process, is working, that it's being followed. So there's a difference between advocating accountability and just saying, oh, God, you go do that, with no explanation and then expecting people to succeed. There's a big difference between that and creating the guidelines for how that work is done, how that documented process should go, and then delegating that. Delegate the process. But this is where the bottleneck comes in, because nobody's got time to create the documentation. So you end up in this spiraling circle of not being able to delegate out your work because there's no documented way of doing it, and all of your employees are just kind of limping along trying to figure it out themselves and being unsuccessful in a lot of cases because there is no documentation, there was no training. So here's kind of some benefits for, why to get people thinking about the overall benefits for all of this. How it benefits a manager is you save time, you achieve more, you increase your value. Getting work done through other people, that's successful management. The benefits to your team, to your employees, they develop as people, they're trained, they learn, they get high self-esteem around it, their job becomes more interesting to them. They can evolve in your company because you're giving them the material and the information to grow as an employee. The team itself benefits from being more efficient, being more flexible, really working as a team where everyone has their goals and their processes that they're to achieve. Balancing the workloads. Generally, when I look at efficiency within a team, there's the people who can do the most, who are the yes people, who got better at it through trial and error. They're given most of the work. And then you've got other team members who you haven't been able to develop and train, so they have less work. One person's really overwhelmed with all the work, and one person's just kind of doing what they're doing. It aids in communication, even within departments. Because if I know as a salesperson that I've passed off this project that I've put my heart and soul into selling off to operations, I know that they're going to deliver that on time, every time, exactly as I've promised. And then in operations, I know that the finance department is going to bill that client and is going to call them when they didn't pay. So the whole company kind of balances on the effectiveness of the processes. And this communication and good team efforts and work really excels when you've got processes for people to communicate, and I know work's going to get done when it needs to get done. Retaining good team members. At some point, I'm going to do the process of the week, the employee onboarding process, and there are some alarming statistics in there about how much money and time is wasted by not keeping good employees. So when you have good delegation, an evenness of work, good communication, good training, people want to stay. And that's what makes your company scalable and successful in the long haul. So here's a couple key things I'll just highlight about this process. You can download this and read it over thoroughly and use it. This is just, Workplan just kind of explains delegation, why it's important, what to think about while you're doing it. Having a documented process is the best way to delegate. But this gives you kind of some guidelines on things to think about when delegating and how to delegate. There's another work plan here on NIST Accountability. So when you delegate something and the employee doesn't do it or doesn't do it right, or all the things that happen, the wrong approach is to then take it away from them, or to then yell at them or be upset and cause, issues, interpersonal issues, which are unnecessary. The best thing to do is to make them accountable to it. So if you've truly delegated something, like you've given them guidelines, there's a documented process for how to do it, even if it's not the best, there's something in place. You didn't just say, go do this. You said, here in TouchStone, here's how to do it. So do it. If they don't do it, then you need some kind of management control around that. And so that's what this NIST Accountability is. And there's actually a form that goes with it. So if I've delegated something and it doesn't happen, rather than feeling defeated and stop delegating, make the employee own it. And you can read through this NIST Accountability sheet to kind of get some ideas on how the employee can then be responsible for what they don't understand and the fact that they didn't do it the way that it was laid out. There's also a script in here, which is like some frequently asked questions or situations that come up in delegation. But here's my favorite down here. A lot of times when you're thinking, what can I delegate so that I have more time, especially if you're a manager or a business owner and you're involved in all the tactical work, this is a quick way for you to really figure it out. Sit and make a list of work that you can delegate right now. That's what this first category is. What is work that you could get off your plate right now if you just had the courage and the managerial mindset to delegate it? Then what's work you could only delegate if you had a system for it or a process, a documented process? What is that work? So what could you delegate if there was a documented process in TouchStone? And then third, what's work you'll never delegate? So this helps you look at it objectively, because if I said to you, you need to delegate more, well, your mind is going to go to, well, I can't delegate, it's impossible. So this is a way for you to break it apart. What can you delegate right now? What is easy, simple, and you've just been holding on to it for no reason? What can you delegate if you had a system for it, a written process that you could write out and train? And then what could you never delegate? Clearly, this category is what it is. But this category, this becomes a priority for you, a priority list. What needs to get documented first, second, and third so you can start to have more time? So task delegation and work management, that is in the library. I have a few questions that I'm going to answer offline. Next week, we're going to talk about the organization chart. I'm going to talk about how to use it, specifically, technically how to build it. But most of the session is going to be about, how to build good organization strategy. So how to use this as a strategy tool.